What I'm going to go through in this video is how to use a pale and test photometer to test for free chlorine, total chlorine and the pH value. So to start off with, what you need to do is rinse your test tubes out. Now I have already rinsed these out, but I'll do it again anyway, because it's important to get rid of any residue there may be in the test tubes from previous pull tests that might interfere with the result that you get. So once you've rinsed them out, take one of your test tubes and top it up to the 10 ml mark with just a sample of water. You're not going to add any reagent to that. You're just going to use that as a blank, and I'll explain what that means in a second. And what you need to make sure you're doing on these pull tests is keeping everything clean and keeping it dry as well. Don't allow your photometer itself to get any build-up of water or grime in there over time. Keep it clean and tidy, and keep your, as I say, keep your test tubes, they need to be clean and dry as well, because the way that these photometers work is this shines light through the sample, and if it's got dirt or grime or moisture on the outside of the test tube, it's going to interfere with the result. So when you're testing for free chlorine, what you want to do is, actually, if you look at that amount of water, that's how much you want to start off with for free chlorine. And you're going to be using a DPD1 tablet for chlorine, for free chlorine. And it's important with these tablets to make sure, if you see there, it says photometer, don't use comparator DPD tablets for photometers, and vice versa. Make sure you're using the correct tablet. So a DPD1, what you do, a little bit of water, tablet goes in without touching the tablet with your fingers. You don't want to touch the tablet with your fingers, or else you're going to affect the result. And what you do is you'll see it go pink. That tells us that there's chlorine in there. There's definitely chlorine in there, or else it wouldn't go pink. So the next stage is to add a bit more water and keep your eye on the colour that it goes. Can you see that it's staying pink? Now that means what you might find sometimes is that it bleaches out. If you see that it started off pink, but then as you added it up to 10 ml, it bleached out and went clear, that basically means that there's way too much chlorine in the pool, and it's literally bleaching the colour out of the DPD1 tablet. Now what you want to make sure you do is not to add the tablet directly to 10 ml, because if it is that superchlorinated, it won't go pink at all. It will instantly bleach out. And what that actually looks like is that there is no chlorine in the pool, because that's exactly what happens when there's no chlorine in the pool. It just doesn't send the DPD tablet pink. And what you might then think is that there's no chlorine in the pool. You go around the plant room and you put more chlorine in the pool, but there actually might be too much chlorine in the pool, and it's just bleaching out the DPD1 tablet. But if it goes pink with a few drops of water in, and then you observe it bleaching out the sample, that's telling you that there is chlorine in there and it's bleaching out the tablet. Now what you want to do with these DPD1, both DPD tablets that you're going to be using, we're going to be using DPD3 in a second to test for total chlorine, but you do need to crush them up using the plastic crushing rod. be careful because these test tubes are made of glass, so don't go sort of stabbing at the bottom of the test tube, or else you'll end up breaking it. Now what you want to make sure is that you've completely dissolved the tablet and that there's no fragments of tablet left. And another thing that's worth pointing out is that in the test tube, the surface of the water forms what's called a meniscus. There's a slight curvature to the water. You're probably not able to see it on the camera because the camera itself is at a slight angle. But what you want is for the bottom of the meniscus to be exactly level with the 10mm marker on the test tube. So once you're ready, so you've got your sample and you've got your blank. What you do is you put the blank in first, because with these photometers they need to be zeroed. Now what you've got on the test tube is a diamond shape. That needs to line up with the triangle on the, if you can see that, there's a, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a triangle on the front of the circular part that you put the test tube in. They need to line up. So put it in, turn the unit on as the on button, and it will default to chlorine. Make sure that the test tube is all the way in, because the lid is designed to shroud out any ambient light. It'll come on at chlorine. Cl2 is the symbol for chlorine. The 5 denotes that this particular photometer is able to measure up to 5 parts per million. If there's a greater amount of chlorine than that, it'll come up with a greater than 5 symbol. But once you've got the blank in, you press the button on the left hand side. Now again, I don't know if you can see, but the buttons are slightly different. That one's a test tube with blank, and the other one is a test tube that is shaded in. So because we're doing a blank, we want to make sure we're pressing the right button. It comes up as 0. Swap the blank for the actual sample that you're going to be testing, and then don't press the blank again, press the test button this time. And then it comes up with 2.28 milligrams per litre of free chlorine. So I'm just going to make a note of that. 2.28. Okay, so that's the free chlorine test done. What we want to do now is a test for total chlorine. So what you do is, to the same sample that you added the DPD1 tablet to, add a DPD3 tablet to it, and then crush it up again in the same way as you did with the DPD1. But what you'll find is that the DPD3 usually takes a little bit more sort of effort to crush it up. Again, make sure that you've completely dissolved the tablet, and then leave it for 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute reaction time for the DPD3. And while you're waiting for that 2 minutes to expire, what I'm going to do is show you how to test for the pH. So what you want with the pH is another 10mm sample. You're not worried about the bleaching out thing with the pH. Make sure it's at eye level when you're checking that the meniscus is at the bottom, that the bottom of the meniscus is level with the 10mm marker. And then what you want here is phenol red tablet. Again, a phenol red tablet for a photometer, not a phenol red tablet for a comparator. Pop that in there without touching the tablet with your fingers, and do crush it up in the usual way. And again, what you want to do is make sure that the tablet fully dissolves. And just before I take the pH, again, make sure everything's clean, make sure everything's dry, and that goes for all of the tests that you do with the photometer. Everything's got to be clean, everything's got to be dry. Let's find out what the total chlorine is. So the free chlorine was 2.28. It's coming up to 2 minutes now. We've prepared our sample with a DPD3. Let's find out what the total chlorine is. Because this unit has stayed on, we don't need to blank it again. We just simply press the button and we've got 2.40. So 2.40 was the total, 2.28 was the free. So of that 2.40 total chlorine, we know that 2.28 milligrams per litre is in the form of free chlorine. So that tells us that we've got a combined chlorine level of 0.12, because basically that's the difference between the total chlorine and the free chlorine. So you basically take the free chlorine amount value away from the total chlorine, which leaves you with the amount of combined chlorine. There's no actual tablet test for combined chlorine. What you do is you test for free, then you test for total, and then you take the free value away from the total value, and that tells you what level you've got in terms of combined chlorine. Let's have a look at pH. What you need to do with this one is get it off of chlorine and onto pH. And it's still got the blank in its memory. So put the sample with the pH tablet in and press the button on the right hand side, and that tells us that our pH value is 7.66. So that's free chlorine, total chlorine. We worked out combined chlorine based off those two, and then pH. What I will mention is if you do get a situation where either that there's so much chlorine that it's bleaching out the sample, or even if there's just a level of chlorine higher than 5, this photometer, and most photometers aren't able to come back with an accurate reading. It will just say greater than 5, or if it's bleached out it will say 0. What you need to do in those situations is, first of all, do another test, because you might have a dud tablet or something like that. So always make that your common practice, that if you get a result that is a bit unusual, always do another test just to make sure that what you're getting is representative of the state of the water. So let's say you've got an elevated level of chlorine and it's bleaching out. What you want to do is take 5 ml out of the original sample. So that's where one of these comes in useful, and replace it with 5 ml of deionized water, which you can get from a petrol station. So take 5 ml out of there, replace it with 5 ml of deionized water, because this does not contain any chlorine. The problem with tap water is that it will contain a little bit of chlorine itself, so it's not a true dilution. So you're basically diluting this down by half. What you should be able to do then is get a reading with the photometer, but what you'll need to remember to do is double up the reading. So if, for example, once you've diluted with 5 ml of deionized water, and you're doing a test with the photometer and it's telling you it's 4 parts per million, remember that it's really 8 parts per million, because you've only got half of the original sample in the test tube.